So I am joined today by Eli Schenkel, Olympic foilist, co-founder of S-Class fencing. So thank you very much for joining us, Eli.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So this segment that we have, that I have on Laments is Aesthetique. So this is just like talks with fencers who also kind of have little like creative endeavors or creative aspects on the side. And we're just kind of examining the intersection between art and fencing. So jumping into your artistic endeavors, right? I'm a really big fan of those kind of like animation shorts that you've posted, kind of sporadically. Let
Oh,
me see if
thank
I
you.
can share my screen on that. So how did you get into that kind of animation? Did that come before fencing, after fencing? What does that look like?
I guess my first jump into a little bit of animation. Not that I'm a professional by any means,
Hmm.
but I used to love I don't know if you remember the Nintendo. I don't even know how old you are, so I don't know if
I'm
you know the
24
Nintendo
currently.
DS. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, of
okay. Did you
course.
ever use the
I know this.
DS?
Yeah, of
Yeah. Do you
course.
remember how on the DS they had like the communication, like the little sketch pad thing? You could do little
Hmm.
animations in
Like the
that.
picto chats,
Um,
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would do little animations in those. I think I would actually use it for that more than the actual video games themselves.
Yeah.
And then I would play around in Photoshop. Like I think the one that you pulled up, I think I actually
Mhm.
did like in Photoshop. And then more recently, I started playing around with Adobe Animate just because I had the rest of
Is
the
that this one
software.
here?
Um, yeah, this one. So this one's in anime as well. And I mean, you can even tell by the way that I'm just like videoing it on my phone. Like,
Hmm.
like I'm no expert, but from what I heard from actual animators, is that animation is just choosing key poses and then like
Yes.
filling it in. So, given my fencing background, I like to think I'm pretty familiar with some of the poses. This one is actually more of a it was the beginning of a sort of tutorial video that I was making for some of my students, which is a specific arm movement that it's kind of like because one of the things that I know fencing is missing that we're trying to incorporate with the channel is actually making these kind of diagrams for people to understand. So like this is saying, hey, what if you take like a circular six and you literally turn that idea on its side? Well, then you get this type of movement that ends up being a pretty important meta in fencing for searching the blade, like at least in foil fencing.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, this is like a very like simplified version of it, but if you were to really like stretch out this movement, you can see how the blade moving forward could catch the blade in even though it's only one circle, it could still catch the blade at two moments, like on the way forward and on the way back, or vice versa, depending on how long you extend your arm and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
Um,
really like that. Even though like it's specifically keyframes, you're really capturing that like forward and backwards depth of the arm. So that's really cool. With these diagrams, right? Are you looking to make like full kind of like almost textbook tutorials on certain
yes,
motions? Okay.
yes. We have. I like to think we have at our club like a slightly different system than most, like going with this kind of DS and video game type thing.
Hmm.
We want to make fencing like full on Pokemon in the sense of like, hey, you beat the gym leader, you win the gym badge. Like taking all the lessons that we've learned from video games and from, I mean, like many aspects of life. Not that I was in a Boy Scout thing, troop, but I mean, you're aware of like their badge system. I think
Yeah.
fencing can have the same type of things. So, well before fencing, like I've always been into drawing and art. Like the first thing I ever thought I would be was, I think like an inventor, followed by like an architect or like a painter or something. Learning what I had about fencing, I wanted to break down the skills into a curriculum where if you can demonstrate each of those skills that you've learned, you'd be able to actually like wear the badge that says like, hey, you know what? I'm the best in my city at flicking or something like that. Um,
So it's kind of like a belt system almost,
exactly,
right?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. So there's I have a project in the works that geared more towards kids, which I would love to share with you. I think I would need to send it at a separate time because it's still like pretty early in the works. I really like to think that that these types of like little projects are going to end up being like start out as like just a little bit of fun, but end up becoming what people really care about in fencing, like learning the meta that they don't teach you in the average fencing class that is pretty much ubiquitous in high level fencing
Yeah,
because you
and
can
that's
kind of
yeah. Sorry, go for it.
yeah, after you.
No, I think that's really interesting too because pedagogically in almost every club, it's still very very textbook stuff, even in lessons and things like that. And there's not, in at least in the clubs I've been in, as much of a focus on like kind of, this is not textbook, I would say,
Yeah,
this kind of preparation, but it has been proven to be a high level thing. So I think
yeah,
that's really cool. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
also, it just seems like you, or like the connective thread between the animation and this kind of badge system is that you're making it, it's less of a mystery, how am I progressing in fencing? Because it's like I have parents and stuff at the club where I coach at. They're like, oh, what is the rating system? And then for me, I'm always like, well, karate, they got belts. It's kind of like that. I don't know if
yeah.
Canada has
I think
the lettering
we do
system. Do you?
have we don't have the letter system, but we have like a an actual like an armband like belt color system,
Oh, it's
but
sick.
like nobody uses it. It's like it's almost laughed at, I think. So I think it could be a good idea if used properly, but I think it's been I don't know if it's the thing is I don't even know if it's underdeveloped because I've just never actually heard of a club or any like serious institutions using it. But I
Hmm.
think as far as marketing for a sport goes, like you said, parents asking about like, hey, how can I see my child's improvement? I think that's a could be a good way to go about it. Yeah, I really want to explore that option further.
Yeah,
I'm currently
it's a good
doing something
visible marker.
similar with kind of going with more of like the streetwear and design stuff. Because
Yes.
at the end of the day, I like to use these projects as an outlet for creative pursuits. Like, just, I mean, drawing is fun, graphic design is fun. I've really enjoyed those since like middle school. Um, but there can be a learning component as well. And obviously, like additional products from like a business perspective. But for me, that's less interesting in how can design serve a purpose. And I know something that we're kind of doing is working on besides the badge system is how do you actually get individual athletes to get to go to tournaments when they might not have the financial backing? And I think a simple solution is like, hey, make them their own kind of logo. So when
Yes.
if somebody wants to support them, they can say, hey, you know what? Let me support this athlete by buying their merch. And since we have their merch kind of in badge form, instead of needing to like buy an entirely new item every time you want to support a different athlete, you just buy the badge and stick that onto your existing apparel.
I think that's super sick because, something that's been kicking around in my head for a long time, especially in the US, like regarding the pro scene and, kind of the financial, effort that goes into that. And without as much return, at least in the US, it's like every mainstream, sport, football, basketball, all those guys, like if you want to support those athletes or those, teams, you can buy their jersey. So I
Yeah,
think that's a really cool, like, um, you know, microcosm version of that within fencing. So that's really sick.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
I
is
can't
it?
wait
Oh yeah,
to outfit
it's
a
going to
bunch
be
of
awesome.
athletes in due time.
And would you be looking to do that more like on the national team scale or like at the local kind of level
Um,
for those badges?
I think there is a big kind of like top-down approach on that front. So I ideally, in my vision, every club would have like its top fencer, and they would be supported in our system. But I mean, I think it comes from the top down. Like, I think it's much easier to look at a national team athlete and be like, oh, this is what I should be aspiring to. This is who I want to support, especially because depending on where you're from, the national team may or may not be well supported. Like I know
Right.
I mean in the Canadian scene, if you're on the national team, you get you do get a stipend or you can get a stipend. It's possible for you to get one, but even at the highest level of funding from the Canadian government, it's not really a livable wage and it's not necessarily worth the time that it takes to be a high performing athlete.
Which is
So,
already a full-time endeavor, so
yeah, so it's like my brother and I kind of just want to help or the S-Class team, let's say, because now we've expanded a bit. Um, we want to make fencing worth pursuing in and of itself, like rather than just, oh, hey, this is what I want to do to get into university and then stop doing it forever. Like we found
Mhm.
that people enter the sport and really stick with it, it becomes a lifetime pursuit. So we might as well try our best to make it like an actual end goal rather than just the what opens the door to your next endeavor.
Yeah, something that could be like self-sustaining in the long run.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
awesome. So I'm gonna pull up. It was maybe a month ago or something that you posted these like almost like China inspired, like fine China inspired
Oh,
mask
yeah, yeah,
designs.
yeah.
You remember those? Okay,
Yes.
so with that in mind and what you've been saying, right, is it fair to assume that you have some sort of like vested interest in the aesthetics or like the marketing aesthetics of our sport?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think with the marketing aesthetics, it's tough because you have like the FIE and all these like safety rules in place.
Hmm.
So there's only so much you can do, and only so much that I think you should want to do at the high level. So
Hmm.
I think more than marketing on the like marketing type stuff on the high level, I'm actually interested in the design elements at a lower level of competition. So, so like an image like this, I think would be like an awesome kind of toy by comparison to, I don't know if you've seen those. I think a lot of clubs have these like really beginner like plastic
Yeah, 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 like the
mask,
red and blue
helmet, hybrid
masks and
things. Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. Like I think these could be an alternative to that. Like I would love to see, and like my goal is to have this type of product, like you see it in a park. Like instead of being like just you go to a
Yeah, yeah,
park and
yeah.
you see people playing soccer, I want to see people fencing. And like I like to think we're making that possible with our low cost fencing equipment that we've been working on. But more on that in the future.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, are these like AI generated Blender by
These ones are AI
you or?
generated. Yeah,
Okay, for sure.
these ones are AI. Like I've been, it's so annoying because I've been wanting to learn Blender, and like it's
Hmm.
on my to-do list, and I had to learn a little bit for the project I just mentioned, but now
Hmm.
that AI is here, it's like kind of like why? Like I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
artists who like really hate it, and it's like yeah, but it does such a decent job
It
at least.
it's a great tool for like a very rough mock-up of like proof
Yeah,
of concept kind of thing. So yeah, that's really
yeah.
cool. But going back to this, kind of the aesthetic flair on these, right? Without compromising like the structural integrity of the mask or any of the other equipment, do you see like space on the professional and like international circuit moving forward for like more dolled up uniforms and things like that?
I I do. I do. I think especially if you look at sports like Formula One,
Hmm.
right? Like I mean like half of the sport is just marketing. They're like, "Hey, look at how cool this car. Look at how many stickers we can put on it." Type
Yeah,
thing. I think the
it's
fencing,
aesthetic. Yeah.
yeah, like the fencing uniform could be the same way. It could impact the sport in so many more ways like being like I like to think that first gen of kids like watching anime and seeing all these kind of main characters who have their own flair who also like to kind of like customize their own appearance. It's like, wait, why
Yeah.
can't we do that? Like, why are we limited in the sport
Yes.
in our ability to do that? So I know that like I've gone to some tournaments with my own like club apparel, like FIE one, so I'll have like a purple stripe going down my arm. And like it's bizarre to me that that's like the most you can do. Like Miles being probably the person with the most flair on his uniform because he has like all these
Hmm.
sponsors, but I
The
feel
Red Bull
like
mask
most
and stuff.
yeah, I feel like I would love to see a ton of people doing that. I would love
Hmm.
to see like pretty much every national team member having a crazy mask and having a different one, even if they're on the same team. Like maybe in a team event, have everybody use a uniform. Like okay, we're all using our national team, or we're all using like the plain white or plain black, like whatever. But on the individual circuit, I think it'd be a lot better for storytelling to be able to see like these different things. I think there used to be a what's it called, like an epee fencer that would have like a crazy like
Yeah,
devil
he's an
clown mask
Italian
thing.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he
yeah,
they made him take it off in that tournament once he got like to the table of eight or something, and it was like, come on,
yeah.
man.
But like, what a cool guy.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome, and I really like that you kind of touched on that aspect of like the younger gen. Or I don't know, how old are you again?
I'm 31 last I
31.
checked.
Okay, but definitely last you
Yeah,
check.
I'm an old head.
But
I
like
get it. I get
definitely
it.
no, 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 not at all. But you presumably grew up watching anime as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like your generation, and mine and the next one coming up, it's like I think that we have all, because of like visual mediums like that, we tend to have a taste, for more extravagant or like flamboyant like colorations and expressions of like, individuality on the strip. So I think that's kind of like where I see the sport going. It's like, people want that like exaggerated, like over the top color and flair, just like we already fence, we're already using swords. So it's like that's already pretty over the top,
Yeah,
in my
let
opinion.
people do what they want. Like, are you
Yeah.
telling me it wouldn't be sick? Like, I don't know if you saw the World Championships, like, what was it, yesterday or 2 days ago? Like, Jadis in the U.S. had like an incredible match against a Canadian fencer. It would be awesome to see him do the same thing in like an iridescent mask. I mean,
Yeah.
if he's already gonna have like the bleached hair and stuff, like why stop there?
Yeah.
And
Lean
that's
into the
not
whole
even,
identity.
yeah, yeah. We have a bit of a tech project in the works, and I'm really hoping that within like 10, 20 years time, when you're watching fencing online, you'll be able to see it with some added like VFX of like, oh, this person's top person in their region. That's why when I watch their video online, they have like a flaming sword, or like their head
Or
is
like a
glowing,
banner or
or like
something.
something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, exactly.
That's tight. So it's like almost an extrapolation off of Yuki Oda's project, right? The
Yeah.
fencing visualization.
Yeah, like visualizing that kind of stuff. But like in that one, I think that project I think is super cool. I'm annoyed that it hasn't been explored further,
And
because
it
you
was
could
it was used at the last Olympics, and they just didn't use it on the replay. Like it was
it's yeah
live at the
it,
event.
it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense, because I think that goes kind of with like the whole marketing thing. Like if there was more let's say attention to the sport, you could have stuff like that. But it's hard to have stuff like that. It's hard to have more attention to the sport without stuff like that, because the average
Hmm.
person watches it, they don't know right of way. Boom, 2/3 of the sport is now inaccessible to them, and then the 1/3 that is accessible can end up looking, I don't know, maybe a little bit scrappy if they're not a fan of epee,
Yeah.
either too patient or too scrappy. So it's like,
Yeah.
why, yeah, why limit things? No
Hmm.
offense to any epeists out there. It's a beautiful game.
It's the people's game, right?
It's
But
the people's game. Yeah, it's the
yeah,
people's game.
not for me. So kind of transitioning over now that we've been talking about like, all right, the aesthetics and the presentation of fencing, right? The whole reason or not the whole reason I reached out to you, but one of the main things that really caught my eye was this Miles Clark, kind of fashion photo shoot, right? Prior to this shot, right, and seeing it on your page, I had never really seen fencing presented in this light. Some of the shots almost look like they're shot with like a fisheye or something. So it's all just a very unique presentation and just gives a lot of attitude. Can you just walk me through like how this even came about and how you got involved with it?
It was, I guess, pure luck on my part, because Miles just reached out to me on Instagram, just saying like, "Hey, I'm doing a project where I'm shooting Olympians in like a bunch of different sports. Would you want to be a part of this project?" So they came to the fencing club, and we had a big old shoot one day, where yeah, they had like stylist, makeup, like it was a full on production, and
This
yeah,
is
it
such a
was
crazy shot.
same
I love
same.
this one.
Thank you. Yeah, the stylist was amazing, and yeah, she put together this whole collection of like, oh, these would work well with the fencing attire as is, as well, and like this shot with having the underarm protector like folded over,
Hmm.
like that kind of stuff actually, in my opinion, looks fashionable, and it's the type of thing that could be, like, I would love to see this in streetwear, and people who really like people who fuck with tech wear, like
Hmm.
I can't wait to see underarm protectors like on the street. I
Yeah.
can't wait to see people
Yeah, that's
rocking
sick. That's
around,
sick.
like walking around with, instead of maybe the full white, maybe it'll be like full black uniforms, and yeah, they'll have their breeches. They'll have, because if you take tech wear and you like just go like the logical next step and then logical next step after that, it ends up becoming a fencing uniform. It ends up
Yeah,
being
because it's
like, you know
all
what?
layers.
Yeah, I want to be layered. Forget scratch proof. I want to have stab proof clothing, like all that stuff. It's got straps, it's got buckles, it's got zippers, it's got everything you need. Like just imagine some breeches with like a sleek cargo pocket, and then
Yeah,
boom,
I
you
mean, we
have
already kind of have like the baby version of that with the back pocket. It just needs to move
yeah.
up a little bit.
Just keep it going. Just
Yeah,
keep it
and
going, and then it'll be the next like watch like Yoji Yamamoto's like next collection be like, actually we're going back to fencing and kendo stuff. I'm
hell
calling it.
yeah. What's I gotta ask, is the tip tape matching the shoes? Is that intentional?
That was a happy coincidence. We happen to have like I think we ended up getting these super bright tip tapes at my club
Hmm.
just for when we're taking videos and stuff, and like for the channel we're like, oh, might as well make it easier on the eye to track the tip. um and the stylist brought in these shoes. Unfortunately, I don't actually wear these while fencing, but I wish I
It'd be
did
pretty
because
sick.
they look pretty sweet.
So this shot, right, or this series of shots is kind of what you're saying, right? Like the top is very reminiscent of like, a fencing jacket and
Hmm.
whatnot. But are any of these like your clothes, or were these all kind of like brought with the shoot and
these
you're
are
just
these
kind
are
of
all
like fitting them?
brought for the shoot. I mean, obviously that's one of my fencing jackets and my
Mhm.
club mask. But most of the clothing in this shoot was not mine. I think the only one because they really wanted it was like a passion project for all the people involved, including the stylist. So she went like
Mhm.
crazy with like this is like a helmet length top stuff like that, which unfortunately out of my tax bracket for the time being. But I think the only piece that was mine is there's a shot of me in like the coaching jacket, doing
Oh,
a
the
lunge
black one.
with what was it? Yeah, those are my shoes. Just because I've been a sneakerhead like since I was like 12 or something. Um,
There you go.
so yeah, still I had to incorporate the shoes
And
somehow,
hair looking on point too. Oh my goodness.
just like
Got
yours,
those
man.
ringlets. Thank you. So let's talk about this the coaching one, right? In my opinion, right, the most striking set of the whole thing, and you kind of got that like
Literally the most
slight,
striking.
yeah, 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 the very tech wear pants and stuff here, right? So is this the kind of thing, right? And maybe the top is different, right? If in the future when there's like an actual silhouette you can buy. But is this the kind of thing that you're talking about where it's like, all right, this is like the next evolution of like bringing fencing into the mainstream, like this kind of imagery?
Yeah, yeah. Like this type of aesthetic, I could definitely see someone walking around in like New York or in Harajuku or
LA
something
or something,
wearing
yeah.
something like this. LA, I would see it. I could see it, but I would hate it because it'd be like, guys, come on, it's like 5,000 degrees over there.
Hey,
Chill out.
never underestimate the hype beasts. They'll wear
Yeah, no, no,
anything.
no. I know. I mean, I'm originally from LA, so it's like
Oh,
I
nice,
mean
me too.
that's part of the reason I left is just like you can't really layer out there. I mean like on a
Got to be
that
willing to go with
yeah
the short sleeve.
yeah the fashion is pain type thing, but it's I can see a lot of like a lot of fence. I mean Adidas Silver back when that line still existed, they did a fencing inspired collection that was like
Hmm.
pretty cool from what I remember. But I just don't think it's a sport that's really seen um, too much attention from the fashion industry lately. Um, I don't know if it's too, because it's generally considered kind of a highbrow sport. So I don't know if
Right.
that people are kind of trying to like shy away from that. But
But you feel like
especially
that would
with like,
intersect with the fashion stuff?
yeah, it should. But maybe I don't know. Maybe people think it's not. They want more of the common touch. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but I think even with like the way 3D printing, how accessible it's becoming, I can see that actually changing like the mask itself. Like being able to do, I wouldn't find it unreasonable to see like fencing brands 50 years from now, or maybe even less, like basically creating custom masks that look like your own face, but in this same type of mesh. Like
Mm.
that could be that could be fun.
Or like even like more transparent, kind of like yeah, higher visibility masks
They've
or
had
whatever.
some they actually had some of those like in the 80s. Like there's this one fencing video I remember seeing where this guy has like this full on like kind of stormtroopery helmet, or no, not even
I
stormtrooper, more
just
like
saw that on the fencing subreddit. They just posted that recently. I know exactly which one you're
was it
talking
the
about.
Cuban dude?
I don't know if he was Cuban, but it was like you're saying, it's like a glass visor,
It's
and
like a
then it had like
full
a full like
glass
nose
visor. Yeah,
piece.
It has that full mouth
Yeah, yeah,
cover
yeah,
thing. Yeah, like I don't know what happened to those because I remember
yeah.
like the cool thing about fencing attire, at least the way it is now, that I remember like growing up feeling like, oh, you know what, my first goal is an aesthetic one. It's like, okay, but okay, before I can even make it into the advanced class, I need to be good enough to switch from French grip to pistol grip, which like when you're a little kid, like you don't really consider the um like how it lets you move the blade around. You're just like, oh, you know what, that one looks cooler. And then
Yeah.
like after that, it's like, oh, you know what, I want to have like the club track uniform. Okay, I want to have the. Eventually, it became like, oh, I want to have the visor mask because that's somewhat of a status symbol that shows like, oh, that you made national team. And now, I mean, now the closest thing is like, oh, you want to have like your national team helmet with your respective flag or whatever. But heck, it'd be so cool if there were like more levels to climb. You know, if it was like, hey, oh, you already made national team. Like, oh, if you're an Olympian, you can wear this type of mask or you get this type of thing. And I think there's actually like a very like like little known aesthetic rule that I think if you win worlds, you can have a gold stencil on your lame, or like if you
That's
win
fire.
red, or if you win world champs, it's like red or something. Or it's like
And no one
Olympic
does that.
champ or yeah, no one does that. Like I think
That's a shame.
yeah, yeah. People gotta take advantage of it. Who want, yeah. How long, wherever you are, put some gold on that lame. I knew a coach in the UK who she would have all of her kids have like really like flamboyantly bright colors. And she's like, yeah, because at a tournament, I can just look across the room and see where my fences are. And I'm like, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
To go hunting around on
exactly.
fencing
Yeah.
time live and stuff. So going back to the fashion stuff, right? And how you're like, oh, and I think, fencing and fashion, they keep missing each other. Um, I This is arrogant of me to assume, but did you check out the Laments page at all?
I have, but I think it was like a while ago. Yeah.
That kind of thing. But the only reason I bring it up, and it's not me trying to plug myself or anything, but I think that we kind of align on this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to lean into this whole like fashion meets fencing kind of thing, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like,
Like this is great.
I'm also, oh, thank you. I'm also not in a high tax bracket, so I'm just going to like thrift stores and being like, oh, what can I throw together for the magazine, or stuff like that. But I just wanted your opinion as a fellow fashion guy on whether or not this kind of stuff is like helpful, for getting fencing to be like more commonplace or like seen as more accessible.
Yeah, and I think anywhere where you can see that looks uncomfortable. Cool
It
shot,
was so cold,
but
so
yeah,
cold.
I hate wet things. Yeah, I could definitely see this being helpful. And I can't wait to share this stuff around more. Um, yeah, more people need a whole like, why is a sword not a fashion piece, right?
Yeah, that's
Or
what I've been thinking too. It's a
even a
cool
guard.
accessory.
Like if you could just walk around. I mean, honestly, it might be kind of sus if you're just like walking around with a blade all the time. In fact, I was stopped when I was still living in New York. I actually got stopped on the metro for just like carrying around my blades like without a bag one time,
Dumb.
and then
That's something I was running into too, because we did like our first like urban shoot like down in Denver recently, and I was like, I really do want to get like some blade shots, but I also don't want to like walk around this like very metropolitan area just like swinging a saber around. But the foil thing, it's like, how are you gonna stop a foil? It's like they got a button. It
yeah,
looks
fair.
to me it looks non menacing,
It
but yeah,
seems not, yeah, pretty non-threatening. No, but a saber
yeah,
like that would be if you have some sort of saber guard like cuff, that'd be like the ultimate win.
yeah. Or just like a glove,
Yeah,
like walking around with like one glove, that could be cool. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Eli, so we'll keep this nice and brief. All killer, no filler.
Hmm.
Is there anything else regarding your art, any projects, or any
I
parting
have
remarks you have about aesthetics and fencing together?
I have a ton, but I have well, I'm currently working on like a streetwear line with we just have like a few designs right now, but they're inspired by the um, let's say the blossoming Asian fencing market,
Hmm.
and there's it's gonna be called Poke Guy, um, which
Okay,
is
so that's a tag. I thought that was just a fun little
no, that's gonna be
bio
that's gonna
thing.
be like the sub. I mean, we have our own like obviously like club merch, which is more sportwear related, but I want to start doing more like the fact that there's no slasher magazine to compete with Thrasher, I think is
Oh
a
my God.
criminal
Okay, so
shame.
that's okay. I ideally in the far future, right? The whole reasons why Lament started is I was like, I need Thrasher, but for fencing.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
sick, so
So
sick.
yeah, uh, that's kind of what I assumed. Like, but there's there's no like zine for fencing, and I hope that one day there can be, and I hope that there's like several different fencing streetwear brands that have that type of stuff. But I know that in one of the cool things I think about fencing is just that how many different markets it reaches, like how many different sets of people, and I know that like poke guy is just a funny little symbol. Like I don't know if I don't remember if I shared the image. I might not have shared anything on Instagram
I
yet,
don't think so.
but
Yeah, I haven't seen anything regarding that.
I'll send you some images, and it's just that it's a play on words because in Cantonese, poke guy sound is actually like a very light curse word. It's kind of like saying like asshole or shit or something.
Yeah,
So it's when I found that out, I just couldn't help but like put together a shirt and go like, guys, this is in order to
this is
be
it. Yeah.
in order to have success in the sport, I think you have to be a bit of an asshole because it is at the end of the day an individual sport. I think it's important to kind of take pride in that, like when needed. Obviously, don't walk around being a jerk all the time. Having a somewhat like crude name or brand around what's typically seen as like such a fancy sport would be nice because
Yeah.
it's like you see none of it except for like maybe Miles in terms of like outlandishness.
Yeah, and it's about like taking, like you're saying, that the highbrowness and juxtaposing it against like common stuff, like the way people talk, real people talk.
Having so many I guess students now and just like seeing how many people the sport is reaching, um, like at all I think economic levels just because yeah like who doesn't want a sword fight. I see a bright future in fencing and in fencing fashion because it's still like compared to most sports I think it's still like almost a brand new sport in terms of accessibility. Yeah, there's a lot that can be done, but there's a lot that is being done currently. Even the fact that like brands like Absolute are now I mean they have been for a number of years now, but now that they have like a whole roster of like athletes that they sponsor, I can see a lot of even like competing Asian brands like following suit and actually start seeing fencing blow up in a commercial level, which will then like trickle down to all these elements that we're talking about, including like fashion and magazines and media. Um,
Yeah, I was
just
just thinking that too about the teams because Ullman has a team now as well,
yeah,
PBT, and so it'd be cool to see almost like a branded team tournament. Like
yeah.
this is Ullman's Epee squad versus PBT or whatever. So
Yeah, well, hey,
that'd be sick.
when S-Class is big enough, and I like to think we're getting there, slowly but surely, after like 4 years. Um, Give us another 4 years, and we'll make it happen.
There we go. I'm looking forward to it, man. Thank you so much for coming on today, and I know you have an incredibly busy schedule, so I really appreciate you carving out
Oh
some of
yeah,
your free time
no
for this.
problem, no problem. Yeah, I'm actually about to head out to coach. Take it easy, dude.
Yeah.